friends. Welcome to More of Jesus podcast. This is Pastor Amy, and this is episode 15. This past week at Dinner Church, we read a story that included a verse that we didn't talk much about, and I want to kind of talk about it. It was in this story where Jesus is sending out missionaries. He gathers 72 of his disciples and gives them instructions and sends them out to all the places it says he intended to go. And because Jesus didn't go with them, if Jesus did this alone without help, he only had 2 hands, 2 feet. But with all these missionaries, he's got 72 hands, 72 feet, all going out to different directions. And one of the instructions that he shares with them when he's giving them instructions, he tells them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so as I think about that one verse that we didn't get a chance to really talk about much, I wonder if that language kind of bothers anybody. This language of like harvesting people. It's not too unlike when Jesus was calling his first disciples and they were fishermen, and Jesus tells them, now on you're going to fish for people. It's the same kind of idea, like you're going to go harvest people. Is it even appropriate to talk about harvesting in our modern way of thinking about things? I just wonder if that kind of rubs anybody wrong. I don't know if it presented a problem even in their ancient way of thinking of things, but I know I am deeply shaped in a culture that is commercialism and consumerism and capitalism. The word that comes to mind is dehumanization. These people aren't a grain of corn or a fish. They are human beings. And Jesus never dehumanized people. Jesus was very, very constantly lifting people up, restoring their humanity, their value, their worth. And so to even think about harvesting someone else, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I think maybe, I'm trying to understand why. I think this part of me realizes that when you catch a fish, for example, or when you harvest grain, for example, what you're doing is you're killing something and then using it for your own benefit, right? For your own profit. And like, as terrible as it is, there's such a thing as like organ harvesting. It's an international crime, but there's people who actually do that to people. It's so terrible. And that's why I think this sounds so horrifically atrocious to me. What helps me is to look at exactly in context of what Jesus is actually asking them and telling them to do. If you keep reading and if you see how that story plays out, both when Jesus sends the 12 disciples and when Jesus sends the 72 disciples, the rest of the instructions are things like, hey, don't bring an extra bag, coat, or purse, or an extra pair of sandals along the way. Basically, go in intentional poverty, relying on the hospitality of others, depending on God and on what God provides. And it's also go in vulnerability. Because when you are receiving hospitality, when you have nothing materially, you're completely vulnerable. So one of the things Jesus says to these people who are like going to harvest something is go in intentional poverty, go in vulnerability, go in weakness, go in powerlessness. And he also says to really befriend and share peace with those that are there. So they are offering peace to people. And that's not all he says to do. He says, cure the sick, cast out the evil spirits, and bring shalom everywhere you go and restoration. And then they're not to gather the people up and take them out and pluck them away from their field or away from their ocean or away from their village and take them somewhere. We talk about how a lot of times our language at church is always come to us, come to where we're comfortable, come to where we're powerful, come to where we make all the decisions. Instead of Jesus saying to these people, go to where they're comfortable, go to where they speak their language, go to where their culture is the primary culture. And learn, be vulnerable, be powerless, listen and learn, and share shalom, share peace, spread it around. So as these people are going, they're actually not killing anyone or killing anything or even stealing things from people. They're not supposed to go in mission and take over the people in their culture and all that. They're supposed to go in humility, vulnerability, and powerlessness and spread this shalom and this peace in their context, in their culture. And then the apostles leave. And they've begun a movement in that place of a contextual faith community, a contextual church, a little gathering that will hopefully keep going after they leave, and take on a new life, an expression of its own that fits those people and continue that shalom, that peace that it's bringing. And so what really is going on here is not what I typically think of when I think of harvesting and capitalism and consumerism. These disciples aren't benefiting in any way. They don't have an extra purse because they're not supposed to accumulate wealth. So this is no exploitation and no personal gain at all. The single only focus is for others to encounter Jesus. And if mission is done like Jesus, it rejects the worldly power system. It rejects status. It rejects wealth. It doesn't exploit these people, because that's another word. Harvesting sounds like a little bit like exploitation. It's not an exploitative mission at all. There's no superiority. It truly is to share the shalom, recognize the reign of God that's already there among the people, announce to them that God's reign is there, the kingdom of God is there, show them the healing and the wholeness and the restoration that comes with that. So this kind of harvesting is not gathering people in for our purposes. It's the opposite of that. Jesus is saying, go out and share and spread the peace and safety and restoration of the kingdom of God wherever you go. Thanks so much for joining us. Please subscribe to this channel if you want to hear each week a new devotion as we do more of Jesus.